Good afternoon, everyone. It is Thursday in Kitsap County, specifically in Bremerton. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so glad that you can join us. This is episode 3 of The Ripple Effect, brought to you by the county. And of course, that means we have who here? We have Deanne and Laura. And I'm going to give some applause here for everyone to hear. Now they can't hear in the studio and they're like, I don't hear any applause, but y'all can hear some applause. Let me give you some more applause. But today, who do we have? Again, we have Deanne Jackson, Prevention and Coalition Coordinator for Kitsap County. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. And also, who else do we have? Well, that's our guest there. But we have Laura Hyde, who is the Prevention Coalition Program Supervisor. How are you doing today?
Doing just great.
All right. So glad that you can join us today. We have a very important episode for you today. We're going to jump right on into it. And what we're going to do is have, my mic is a little loud. Okay, I'm going to turn my mic down. See, last month, our mic was a little low. So we wanted to make sure that we rectified that this week. So we have done that, which is good. So we always like the feedback. Thank you, everyone who is tuning in with us today. We appreciate you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it to Deanne to introduce our guest today. Would you like to do that?
Yes, indeed. Well, I would like to introduce our guest straight from St. Michael's Medical Center, Dr. Wang. So thank you for joining us.
Of course, I'm glad to be here. I'm Alfred Wayne, one of the ER physicians at St. Michael's Medical Center. Short, quick bio. Originally from the Midwest, I did my training at Indiana University and came up here approximately 4 years ago to practice.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
All right. Will you let us know, Laura, what today is about? What are we talking about today? Because this is a really important one this month.
Well, today is all about poisonings and prevention.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get into our very first question here. For our listeners who may not be familiar, what is National Inhalants and Poisons Awareness Week? And why is it especially important for parents, educators, and youth advocates to pay attention right now? Good doctor?
Yeah. So National Inhalants and Poisons Awareness Week is a week where we get to focus on something we really don't talk about usually, and that's inhalants being something that can be abused and have serious side effects, right? When we think of inhalants, we think of probably gasoline, right? Rubber cement, permanent markers, things that we use on a household basis, but we don't think of them as something that we can abuse. I think this week, its importance lies in a few numbers that I think will highlight its importance. So about 11% of high school students in their lifetime have reported use of inhalants. Even though the cases of inhalants have decreased since the 1990s, when the EPA phased out the use of hydrochlorofluorocarbons in refrigerant use, the cases are still pretty prevalent today at 5 cases per million. From 2001 and 2021, there were approximately 250,000 cases of inhalant use reported, and actually from that, 250 cases of them died from inhalant use. So pretty serious, and I think it's a good week for us to focus on something we don't usually think about.
Agreed.
Deanne?
Yes, I am there too. And our role in it for our prevention efforts and our 2 coalitions is exactly what you say. We don't talk about this very often. And even when we do, it's so generic. It's, huffing this or, paint or, whatever. But it is an issue. And this is something that, we do touch on these topics because we need to be talking about them. It may not be a comfortable conversation. And it may be an inconvenience when you go to check out at the grocery store and you have to ask for help to get spray paint, but there's a reason for it. So having these tough conversations helps educate and build awareness in the community. And that's more important than a little bit of inconvenience at the checkout.
Absolutely.
Anything that you wanted to add there?
Well, I just think many, many moons ago, I worked for a park system. And so I was the playground leader in the summertime in the park. And we had one neighbor who would come in and with different chemicals quite often and situate in the woods, and he'd be inhaling. And his mom came in and had a talk with me about it. And she's like, I can't put everything out of the house. There's something in every cupboard, in every room that could be used as an inhalant. And she was really feeling responsible, but also out of control. It's out of control because you need cleaning chemicals, you need different household items. So I on this topic, I always think of her and her frustration as a parent trying to keep her son safe.
Yeah, it was interesting that this was going to be the topic this month, and maybe that is centered around some of the legislation, but they just outlawed whippets. I saw that in the news the other day, and it's like, wow, we're getting ready to talk about this, and this just came on the news feed. I think I saw it either last night or the night before. And so I'm not really, I know about these things just because we're in this world, but growing up, not a big thing, huffing, and I don't know what they call it today, but it was cuffing back when I was a kid. So just wasn't really aware of that. So just really interesting.
And you're right, the timing is perfect. We have been following it. And for those who are familiar with our substance abuse prevention coalitions, it's something that we try to encourage. And we couldn't tackle it as, something that we got in there on the front lines, but we kept providing education and making sure that everybody knew where things were and talked to your legislators and just advocating for people to be aware and make public their thoughts and opinions about it. And apparently their opinions guided it in the right direction.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah. Hey, that could be one more life saved.
That's true. That's very
Probably
true.
many more than one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Laura, I'm going to come to you with this one next. When people think of substance misuse inhalants and household poisons, often aren't the first things that come to mind. Why should they be?
Why should they be concerned?
Yeah.
Well, because children die. And it leads to many more paths for addictions to other chemicals, but they might not make it there.
Yeah, that's powerful. Doctor?
Yeah. We don't, like we said, we don't usually think of inhalants as a substance or a drug of abuse, right? The media usually portrays it as, methamphetamines, cocaine, fentanyl. We just don't really think of it. We think of it, rubber cement. We use it as glue, right? Gasoline, we use it to power our cars. But we should think about it because it does have very serious medical effects. Inhalants can affect almost every organ in the system, in your human body. Since they're inhaled, they're very caustic to the lungs. I'm just going to go into a little detail of the effects they can have on the human body. But as they're inhaled, they can cause inflammation in your lung cells and result to something called pulmonary edema, which is fluid in your lungs. As they're inhaled, also usually from a bag, children or whoever are abusing it can actually asphyxiate and suffocate and die from it. Long-term use can affect the brain. Inhalants often affect the cerebellum, which is part of the brain that helps with balance. So with long-term use, people start developing an unsteady gait. Inhalants can also interfere with vitamin B12 metabolism. And vitamin B12 is really important for maintaining that myelin sheath for your nerves, and that helps with conduction for all your nerves. Since that's interfered with, people start developing peripheral neuropathies, which is inflammation in their nerves that can cause permanent numbness, weakness in their arms and legs. Wow. Besides, the lungs and brains, it can also affect the heart. There's something called sudden sniffing death. Wow. It's very rare, but sometimes when someone inhales these substances, your body releases so much of its natural reserve of catecholamines, which is norepinephrine and epinephrine, that it causes heart arrhythmia, and the person dies from it suddenly. Wow. Besides that, also can interfere with development of your red blood cells, causing anemia. It can also put you at risk for leukemia, lymphoma, affect your kidneys, causing metabolic issues like low potassium, and even increase your risk for kidney stones. So inhalants can really do a lot of things to your body system that are not
Yep.
good.
Dan?
Oh, I was just thinking, listening to Dr. Wang, it's a reminder that, even if somebody, and young and old, doesn't matter what your age is, if somebody's inhaling these substances and does some damage to their body, even if they don't do it all the time, some of the damage is present and it doesn't go away. They're going to end up carrying the rest of their life with whatever metabolic issues.
Absolutely.
I wanted to, just listening to you speak, Doc, something came to me. And when I grew up, and just let me know if this is part of inhalants, but I kind of feel like it is in a way. I grew up in foster care for a while, and I stayed in some pretty horrible places in Seattle coming up. And in our teen years, we were locked in the basement at night, but that's not here nor there. But you left, adolescent kids to their own devices. And we would play the knockout game. And what you would do is you would bend over, and I almost don't want to talk about this, but I think I need to warn, parents and youth about this. And so you take as many deep breaths as you can, and then you stand up against the wall, and then a person chokes you until you pass out. And so that is what that makes me think of, just listening to you speak. And we would pass out, we had people with broken teeth because they would fall on their face, and some were a little bit mean about it. And, other times we'd catch you and things like that. But that's a game that we played when we were youth. So would that kind of go under this category? Would that be kind of the same effects? I mean, you're cutting off oxygen to your brain. What are your thoughts there, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar. Both of them sound not great for your body, right? There is like a few reported cases of adolescents doing something similar, as you said, just trying to almost suffocate themselves, but at the very end, inhale like an inhalant. I don't know if that causes a higher high, but obviously just thinking about that definitely increases their risk for suffocation. Yeah.
Scary. Yeah, that literally hit me. So I don't know if you had any experiences. I mean, we're kind of around the same age group, so...
Not me personally. I do know people that have, and yeah, it's kind of a thing that seems to trend, because I'm hearing some of it in other arenas now of that similar concept, and it's like, you don't be playing with the brain.
Exactly.
No,
we only get one of them for a reason.
True story.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to our next question. What exactly are inhalants, and what are some common household examples that families may not realize are risky?
Yeah, inhalants, broadly speaking, is any volatile compound, which is a compound that turns from liquid into gas very quickly, or comes in a gaseous form that can be inhaled as a source of substance use. There's 3 broad categories of inhalants, scientifically speaking. The first one is hydrocarbons. Those are the most common. These include things like kerosene, gasoline, permanent markers, and rubber cement. They're in paint thinners, they're in paint. So these can be commonly found in, garages, your kitchen, etc. The second category is nitrous oxide, as we talked about whippets. For listeners and viewers, whippets are little silver containers that you can attach to whipping cream containers to make whipped cream. They also come in forms for accelerants for cars and motorcycles, but mostly abusers would use those things called whippets, those little silver containers, and break them and let the gas escape into a bag and breathe it in. The last category is nitrites. They're a little less common now since a few formulations have been outlawed, but they can still be found as room deodorizers, quote unquote. And these are the same thing, broken open, inhaled as well.
Wow.
Do we know how youth learn about, what chemicals and what products in their home they can use? Like, because I didn't know about any of these things when I was a kid.
I know from what I hear through our coalition work is from peers. So it's got to start somewhere. The information came from somewhere. So they're getting it from their peers, but more so from the internet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We've had upwards of 30 parents that have reached out and let us know that they've talked to their kids about watching videos, different places and things like that. And unfortunately, it's one of those things with social media and with the various platforms, a lot of information that's not safe oftentimes not viable,
Mhm.
is out there. And if parents aren't paying attention and restricting access to things and monitoring, our youth can be exposed to a lot of really, really dangerous and illegal things.
Mhm.
I know that one of the things that we hear a lot is it's very important to be present and aware and monitoring not just one child, but when they gather together. So if they're at your house and working on homework and they have a phone or a computer with access to the internet, it's a good idea to have that done in an open area. So have them working on it in the living room or in the hallway or in the kitchen where adults are nearby so they can pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some hidden dangers here in our own home, and a lot of us have no idea. And so we definitely need to be cognizant and educated as to what those things are. So I do really appreciate this conversation today because I have little ones. So she's not so little now, but this is the age that, hey, this is fun. Let's do this. And it's like, oh, it's not going to hurt you, right? There's a lot of peer pressure. And we talked about that a little bit from teen dating last month. So all these things really kind of go together when we think about prevention. And so it's very, very important. So I want to thank everyone who might be just tuning in to The Conduit. We are watching episode 3. You are watching it live here in studio. Always remember, you can come and be a live studio audience member, or you can watch online in all the various channels. But please do share, like, and subscribe. These conversations are critical. This saves lives, and it definitely saves the lives of our youth. And we want to just say thank you for the good Dr. Wong for coming and being our guest today. So very important. And you might see him in the emergency room if you have the unfortunate case to end up in the emergency room. So probably don't want to see Dr. Wong in his natural habitat, but he is an emergency room physician at St. Michael's Medical Center. So we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and coming to visit with us today. All right. So, and we'll go back to you, Dr. Wang. Sorry about that. Question 4, at what age do we typically see experimentation begin, and why are younger adolescents particularly vulnerable?
Yeah. We see the adolescent age group as the typical age that experimenting starts to begin. Peak age group for inhalant use is 7th and 9th graders. We see this for a multitude of reasons. Kind of touched about it just now, Deanne, but their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet. Their prefrontal cortex is part of the brain that helps with emotional and impulse control. Since it isn't fully developed yet, they can fall prey easier to things like peer pressure, right? They don't have a full self-identity or self-esteem established yet. So they depend on pleasing their peers to develop that. Also, because their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet, they can have this sense of, invulnerability. They feel like their actions don't have consequences. And if they do, it doesn't affect them. Added to that, inhalants are super easy to find, right? They can go to their kitchen, they can go to the garage and experiment with these. They can even go to a store. It's not illegal to buy paint, right? Paint thinners. So I think with the ease of accessibility, as well as their immaturity of brain development, it really puts adolescents at higher risk.
Wow. Laura, jump in there.
So in that respect, when times are tough financially, it's easier to find something in the home that doesn't cost any money. And quite often the adults aren't thinking about protecting those chemicals from the kids or protecting the kids from the chemicals. And it's important to put things in such a place that they're not easily accessible. And again, just be present with the kids. They, as often as you can, have them gathering in a place where it's within earshot. Try to keep one ear open while you're doing things and be aware of what's going on. And then if they're outside of your vision or your hearing range, then, go check on them. Bring in a snack, see how everything's going. Do they need anything? Just really make it clear that an adult could walk in there at any moment. And that is highly discouraging.
So part of what I'm hearing Laura say, Deanne, is you need to be involved in your children's lives. Intrusive even, and really kind of cultivate those relationships in hopes that your child will have these conversations with you and maybe talk about what they're experiencing with their friends at school or outside of school. It's like, hey, my friend is doing this and this is happening, and you can have an educated conversation with your child and talk about the dangers. And it's like, it may sound fun, but it only takes one time. And they don't often believe that. What are your thoughts on that there?
I think you are absolutely right. I mean, I've shared before, I have 6 kids. They're all grown, and I have a pack of grandkids, and I'm having those same conversations with them. One, if you're not present, you have no idea what's going on or what they're exposed to. And let's be real, there are things that are going to be in their wheelhouse that they're going to be. I mean, the girls are going to have nail polish remover around. This is a chemical. This is something that is smelly as all there is. But they also have art projects, so they might have rubber cement or whatever. So if you're engaged and involved in what's going on, that's one thing. But it's our job as parents. It's our job. We need to have those conversations. Some folks may say, well, I don't have kids at home anymore. And I've had this conversation with hundreds of people in our community. It doesn't matter if you don't have children or don't have them at home anymore. You're existing in our community, and you are seen by children every day of all ages. You can be stopping at the gas station on the way to work for a cup of coffee or whatever that looks like. You're going to interact and see kids. And the way we support and educate our kids is going to be very specific to how we engage with them. And if we're not building relationships with those ones that are in our lives, we're missing an opportunity. So meet them where they are. May not be easy, but nobody said parenting was easy. I mean, if they had said that, I would sue.
All right. Well, shout out to Sonia Miles 3352, says great information. Thank you so much for tuning in. And, Doc, as I was saying before, me growing up, we didn't have these experiences. They were very different for us. It was putting glue on our finger and making kind of an imprint and maybe eating it, but we weren't thinking about inhaling it. Just thoughts for, maybe, the older Generation X. I'm close to being called a boomer, so I know it's a pejorative for many of us, but, just really express upon the importance building on, having that conversation with your kids and maybe your grandkids on what this is and getting educated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Laura, Deanne kind of are absolutely right. Every relationship is different, right? Your parent and child relationship is very different. It's hard. I'm going to say it's hard, right? But I think just starting early, right? We know that adolescent age group is kind of the highest risk. So you want to have this open communication with your child as early as possible. So you have this trusting relationship so your child understands where you're coming from and looks up to you as a role model. If you're not involved in your child's life in the early stages, when they grow up, they're not going to trust you as much, right? And again, every relationship is different, but I think communication is key, and early communication is even more important.
Absolutely. We are huge advocates for early prevention.
Yeah, the earlier the better. I remember when I was raising my daughter, doing art projects and, having her girlfriends there, and we'd be doing art projects, to keep them busy rather than doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing. But we did art. Markers smell. Glue smells. And so one of them would comment, oh, that smells good. And I'm like, one thing I would say is like, don't smell too much because it'll hurt your brain. And I didn't realize how one of our neighbors took that in and really felt that was important to her, is that, oh my gosh, that could hurt your brain. Never thought about that. And when she was 13 or 14, she was in the car with me and my daughter. We were going to soccer, and there was some kind of aroma, and she's like, "Careful, it'll hurt your brain." She says, "Oh, I learned that from you, Miss Hyde." Made me so proud.
What's crazy about that as we move on to the next question is I remember the scented markers, right?
Yeah.
It was like grape was my favorite, and
Mhm.
it's almost encouraging you to inhale.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is how this is, so why don't I inhale other things? And I'm gonna call my daughter out. She was a licker when she was younger, so it's like, stop licking the car window. I won't say your name out loud, but you know who you are, little girl. But she would taste everything, and that's how she was experiencing the world, and it was just so wild. So you could see folks, inhaling, and that being a challenge there. If you do want to ask a question to anyone on the panel today, including Dr. Wang, go ahead and type it in the chat. This is what I really want to get to. Are there physical signs parents or educators should be watching out for? That's a big one. Don?
Yeah. Inhalant use can be pretty sneaky. There are a few physical signs that can kind of indicate that your child might be abusing. First of all, inhalants have this chemical odor to them, so you can smell it on the abuser's breath, clothes, skin sometimes. You can also find empty solvent containers in the trash or on their clothes, or used rags or bags in their clothes or in the trash can as well. Inhalants are very drying to the skin, so people who abuse it and inhale it through a bag can develop something called a glue sniffer's rash. And it's this red, dry rash around their mouth and mid-face, and that could be indicative. A few signs for acute intoxication, right? What do kids look like when they're acutely intoxicated with inhalants? These can be very non-specific and hard to find, since inhalant, that acute intoxication phase, is only between 15 and 30 minutes. So it's very short-lived. But if you do catch it, the symptoms are non-specific. So they can range from runny eyes, congestion of the nose, being lightheaded, a lack of disinhibition, being a little bit wobbly on their feet. So very non-specific, but those are the signs to look for.
Dan, anything you want to add?
No, I'm thinking we had one of our kids that was experimenting, and I didn't know there was a name for it, the rash. And it's like, oh my goodness. And when I found out that it occurs from like a lot of use over time, and it was a pretty scary thing, and so for you parents that are out there listening or hear this down the road, even if you're close to your kids and you're talking to them and you're doing all the things, don't beat yourself up. They're still going to make decisions, and sometimes they make the bad ones. And, we have a job to do. And as long as we do our part, we also get to let them do theirs. It doesn't mean that we step away and just, let them crash and burn or do something horrible. It just means that we need to meet them where they are. So it was a harsh reality for me, but I've learned a lot since then. So I'm glad to have you here to help share this information with our community, because it's not worth to sacrifice the lives and the futures of our community members, and not just kids. There are adults that are using these inhalants as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
I also think it's important to remember that their brains are developing, and they're going to be trying different things, experimenting with the world as they get older and become adult-ish. And it's really important. I think it's really important to catch them when they fall and allow for mistakes, as long as they learn from them and grow from them, and you support them through the peril. Now, that's assuming that they make it through that single use, which doesn't always happen. So again, being vigilant is important, but also redirecting and educating when they stumble or fall.
So a question that we have here in the chat: how do we have the conversation if we see the signs without them shutting down? Like, what do we do there?
You want to do that one?
Well, sure. I think, just finding the right moment to engage, kind of, you can engineer a moment. You can decide to take a day trip or a long ride, or maybe it's something that needs to be immediately addressed. And then it depends on how your communication style is with your kid or the teenager or child that you know. So that being said, talk to them about how it can affect them. What are the implications of that use? Talk about the fact that they could die, they could hurt their brains, they could hurt their kidneys, they could hurt their lungs. They can wind up getting some horrible disease later on in life, 10, 15, 30 years down the road. It's important to help them think long term, because kids are very much in the now. And so you want to address things that affect them now, but also, hey, don't forget, you have a future. It might affect your ability to learn. And if you're not a good student, then you might not be able to do that career that you want. It's hard to become an astronaut if you have a lot of physical problems. It's hard to become a scientist if you aren't able to pass chemistry. Just kind of know your kid and try to find what their goals and aspirations are, and then point out how the use could interfere.
Doc, can I ask you if someone does come into the emergency room and you treat them, what's the conversation kind of post? It's like, okay, we were able to save you. You got lucky this time. What is your advice to the parents, or whether it's an adult or a child? What do you say to the patient?
Right. I am an ER physician, right? So my job is to really medically stabilize. So when I see patients who abuse inhalants or any other drugs, my job first and foremost is to make sure we take care of your medical issues, right? If you're having breathing issues, I'm going to manage that. If you're having neurological issues or brain issues, my job is to manage that as well. For the addiction aspect, I totally agree with Laura. I think parenting is very important, but I want to tell the listener and viewer that you're not alone, right? Mm-hmm. There's a whole healthcare community. Mm-hmm. We have Kitsap County here to help, right? There are plenty of resources. I am by no means an expert in treating addiction. Mm-hmm. That's why we have our social workers at the hospital. You can reach out to your pediatrician as well for resources about how do we treat addiction, because addiction isn't just one thing, right? It's not just the medical management. I can stabilize you, but after that, you need a whole team and you need a lot of time to treat this addiction.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you. If every parent, educator, and community leader listening today could take one action during National Inhalants and Poison Awareness Week, what would you want it to be? Deanne?
Ooh. Well, I'll be honest, this is probably coming from, I've got the spring bug. I think the first thing that I would say, aside from reassessing, where you are in communication with your child, whatever the age is, I think I would recommend folks do a walk through their home. Look around, see what you have. I remember having an exercise with my kids. I had 3 of them running around with the Mr. Yuck stickers, which was a big thing. I mean, some of the kids decided that one of the kids was toxic and put it on his forehead, and it's the whole thing. But at the end of this whole exercise, we had this harsh reality of we had a ton of chemicals in the house, tons. And the kids weren't looking to inhale them, but I think that's where I would start. Look at what you have in your home. And, if you have a child that is in the home of age to explain, show them what these things are. If you've got those Mr. Yuck, young and old, we all know what it means. So when we see that sticker, we know. But if we're educating our kids about what's in the house and, they know what's there, but having those open conversations with them, I think is a really good place to at least kick things in the right direction, hopefully.
Absolutely. Can I go to you?
Health conversations. That was one of the things that I focused on with my daughter is what is healthy, what is not. Is it healthy to take drugs and alcohol? No. Is it healthy to inhale things that smell weird or smell bad? No. And taking it from a health and safety aspect and having that conversation. And I just keep knocking on that door, talking with kids. And I don't just mean parents, I mean the neighbor, I mean the grocery store clerk that might see them purchasing something, say, hey, I hope you're not going to breathe that. It could kill you. You know, every little phrase or sharing of information with a kid is a good thing. So people could just take a moment, and when a kid comes into their world, think about inhalants and poisoning.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Wang?
Yeah, I think the key is education, right? This whole podcast is for just educating the public that inhalants is something that has potential bad side effects, right? Once we are aware as adults, then we can start educating and doing those actions, right? Making sure we're storing these inhalants safely. Maybe we have those conversations, right, with our children earlier. I think just education is a really big key from today's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, again, you know, coming from this space of not being really informed about inhalants and having a different perspective on that, and thinking more of illicit drugs and alcohol are the main things that I'm concerned about. It's important to know that there are blind spots out there for us all, and education really is a key piece of it. One of the things that I tell my daughter, she's an athlete, so she's in gymnastics and track and field and basketball, and you know, you're an athlete and you want to take care of your body, and she'll tell dad, you know, sugar is death, you know, white bread is bad, dad, you know. So she's on it, and we can, you know, really have those conversations, and it's more than just, you know, her physical health there, in far as drug use or, you know, maybe inhalants. But just how you overall take care of your body, you know, making sure that you eat well, making sure that you get enough sleep, right? Having strong mental health. But this really is kind of a blind spot that I haven't really had conversations with her about, and I need to do that. And so I appreciate this conversation and this awareness here. And there's so many different, hey, it's Awareness Day and Awareness Week and Awareness Month, and you know, there's so many of it that it gets glossed over. And so just taking the time out to say, hey, we're really going to lean into this and talk about what this issue is, what things you should be looking out for, and how you can go forward and get resources and get help if you need it. But really, this is about prevention, right? So we want to make sure that it doesn't happen in the first place, because we know this really does save lives. And I think the piece that people really miss is, like pregnancy and many other things, right? It only takes one time. And so, you know, kids are fearless, and it's like, hey, you know, it's not going to hurt me. I can do it. My friends did it. They're fine. They've been doing it all this time. And this one time, and then that child is gone, your friend is gone, and think about that and the consequences and how dire that is. And I think sometimes we miss that piece of it, and it's just so critical. And so we kind of talked about a lot, you know, what are the physical signs that we can look at? What are the things that are in the home? Is there a place that we can get resources that anyone can share? Like if they come into the emergency room, Dr. Wang, is there a pamphlet or anything that you hand out to folks that says, you know, hey, these are the list of things you need to watch out for, aside from what brought you in here in the first place? I know for prevention, we have a list of pamphlets and information that way. But is there anything like that in the emergency room, Dr. Wang, that folks have access to on the other side of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have pamphlets specifically regarding inhalants. I think we have a lot of resources for all types of substance use, and we have a whole team that can help address that as well. Certainly, if you guys have resources, I think that would be great to have.
We'll make sure you're hooked up.
Yeah.
So one question we have in the chat is, do you see an uptick during spring break?
Man, I actually don't know the temporal component of inhalant use. That's a good question. I'll have to look that up and get back to the viewer. You know, just thinking logically, possibly, right? It's a spring break. Also, it's getting a little warmer children are a little bit more outside. They're free to do a little bit more activities that may be less monitored by their parents. So certainly could be put off to get back to you guys.
I think spring break can be a really challenging time, just from what we hear from the prevention field, is that a lot of kids are unsupervised. Parents and guardians and other adults are working. And so there's a lot of kids out there just not being monitored. And so as an adult, it's good to find out about opportunities to engage the kids during spring break and come up with things that they can do and ways to check in and just be intentional with what happens for children during spring break.
I wanted to ask one more bonus question, if you will grant me that.
Of course.
What happens physically to the brain and body when someone misuses inhalants?
Yeah, I think I touched upon a little bit of it in a question before. Inhalants affect the body and basically every organ system. For the brain especially, it can cause an unbalanced gait. That's kind of the biggest thing we see, a lot of numbness in the extremities, physical weakness in their extremities and their legs. So people can have a lot of difficulty walking, and this can be permanent. It can affect the heart and lungs, like I said, like you said, one use, right? Just one time. With the lungs, you can suffocate from it. With the heart, the sudden sniffing death, it can cause a heart arrhythmia the first time you use it. You could pass away from it. So very serious, both short-term and long-term effects.
And I really wanted to lean in on that again, just because, again, a lot of times folks are like, oh, I did it once. Maybe I went to the emergency room, but I'm okay now. So, maybe I could do it again. My friends are still doing it. And so it's just really important to note that, this doesn't have to be a short time or a short-term effect that you have that has negatively affected your body or your brain. And you may not even see it from a cognitive standpoint immediately. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. Adolescents who are abusing, they don't notice that their behavior starts to change, right? Their performance in job and schools start to change. Their hobbies start to change, right? It's a global thing. Not only your body, but your mind is affected.
All right. I just wanted you to weigh in because that was our last question, but that one really kind of hits me in the side.
But it made me think of something completely separate. And feel free, even Laura, if you know. We know that vaping is legal for folks, of legal age. But the question is what about the emissions, that vapor that comes from that? If that is inhaled, would that be under that same classification? Because there are over 2,000 chemicals that are dispersed into that vapor. And a lot of them are unidentified to us and unregulated. So would that fall under the category of an inhalant if somebody was?
It's classically not classified as those three types of inhalants I talked about, right? Like the hydrocarbons, nitrous oxide, nitrites. Still, though, it can have serious side effects, even though it's not, quote unquote, one of the inhalants that in the healthcare department we focus on. That's being, like I said, hydrocarbons, nitrous oxide, and nitrites. And
maybe as they get to know a little more about what's in that vapor exhaust, maybe it'll end up being classified, maybe one of its own. But I like to share an example, and it's people who know me know it's just the way I am. But I've known this individual. So if this individual is watching, yep, I'm talking about you. They were vaping like they used to say, like the smoker that smoked, the chain smoker, but it was vaping. And they had a new little one and they were vaping in the vehicle. And I said, well, you're not going to take the baby in that car, are you? And he says, well, I'm not going to vape while the baby's in the car. And I keep the window open. And I said, oh. And then I said, I want you to do an experiment with me. They had just gotten their car back from the detailer, so we knew that it was super clean. I said, I want you to start your car like you're getting ready to go, roll up the windows, and I want you to take one puff. Leave the window up, one puff, which I know is horrible because then he was like in the box full of the icky. And then he turned the car down and he said, now what? And I took a tissue from his glove box and I wiped it off. and it was like the tar nicotine that you get on the wall if somebody smokes a lot in the house, and you see those old homes. And I said, imagine what's on your lungs. And I just walked away, kind of the mic drop moment. But the reality is the only reason I did it is because not only do I care about that little one, but I care about this individual. So yeah, I'm curious to see where it's going to go. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that arena, and that's outside of our wheelhouse on that level. But it's important to be aware that there's lots of stuff that we can inhale in that may or may not be categorized yet, but it's not good for us.
Well, I think that's a great question, because you hear about popcorn lung from vaping, and so what are the long-term effects of secondhand vaping or third-hand vaping, right? Because there's secondhand smoking and third-hand smoking. So what's the deal with that? Do you have any information on that, Dr. Wayne?
I think it can definitely cause some lung damage, but vaping is still pretty new, right? So we don't have a ton of evidence or data behind it yet, as much as smoking, right? Smoking's been there for years now. We've gathered so much data, but vaping is still quite new. So we're still seeing those side effects and discovering more things that are,
it's terrifying, right? Because it is so new, and they just pushed it through so quick. Like, yeah, go for it. It's all good. It's like, oh man, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And we can't kid ourselves. Look at the devices that have been made. We've been talking about it for the last couple of years. I'm sorry, but if you have something that smells like bubble gum, I don't think most adults are going to be seeking after the bubble gum. It's not. And the devices themselves, if you have things that are disguised to look like something else, come on. We're using our children's lives here. No, we need to wake up. This is not okay.
Just to say.
And the other thing I think of is, they're incinerating something on metal. And so when you treat metal with high heat, you're going to release some of that metal into the vapor. So at the very least, heavy metals are going into the lungs and going into the surrounding area. And we know that heavy metals cause cancer and cause all sorts of other problems with your body. So even if it was just water vapor, you're still incinerating something on a metal surface, releasing heavy metals and breathing that in.
Well, I think we will leave it there for today. This was a great one. I learn something every month, but this is one where this wasn't my wheelhouse at all. Definitely not a subject matter expert in any stretch of the imagination, but we really want to thank Dr. Alfred Wang for coming today. We really appreciate you. Let me give you another applause here for the audience. Emergency physician at St. Michael's Medical Center. So you might see him. Hopefully it's just in the parking lot and you can wave to him, but you're not checking into the emergency room to be a patient of his. Hopefully that is not the case. I want to tell everyone our next episode of The Ripple Effect, episode 4, is Thursday, April 23rd, 2026 at 2 p.m. Alcohol Awareness Month. Ooh, this one is going to be another big one. I know a little bit about this one, but man, we're going to have some really good experts. Are we able to let the cat out the bag yet, or is it a secret?
No, I think we can let the cat out of the bag.
All right, go ahead.
All right, we have Marsha Masters, who is the local representative for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Others may know that as MADD, M-A-D-D. And we also have our local area expert in fetal alcohol awareness. She addresses all sorts of things in that, and she's been in the field for over 30 years. So they're both going to be joining us and talking about alcohol. It'll be interesting.
Good one.
All right, so tune in. Make sure again that you like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching this episode of The Ripple Effect. For the team here, I am R1 Cameron. This is The Conduit. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we will see you